The notion that the mainstream media uses global warming to oppress Christians is a complex and multifaceted topic. While it may seem far-fetched to some, there are indeed arguments to be made that the media's portrayal of global warming can have a disproportionate impact on Christian communities. To begin with, it's essential to understand that the media's coverage of global warming is often tied to a broader narrative of environmentalism and sustainability. This narrative, while well-intentioned, can sometimes be presented in a way that is hostile to traditional Christian values. For instance, the media often emphasizes the need for individuals to reduce their carbon footprint and live more sustainably, which can be seen as a moral imperative. However, this message can be problematic for Christians who believe that God has given humans dominion over the earth. Some Christians may interpret the biblical mandate to subdue and have dominion over the earth as a call to exploit natural resources rather than conserve them. As a result, the media's emphasis on environmentalism can be seen as a challenge to Christian values and a form of oppression. Furthermore, the media's coverage of global warming often focuses on the need for collective action and government intervention to address the issue. This can be seen as a threat to Christian notions of individual freedom and limited government. Some Christians may believe that the media's calls for greater government control over the economy and personal lives are a form of totalitarianism, which can be oppressive to those who value individual liberty. Additionally, the media's emphasis on the scientific consensus around global warming can be seen as a form of intellectual bullying, where those who question the prevailing narrative are marginalized and silenced. Another way in which the media's coverage of global warming can be oppressive to Christians is through the use of language and imagery. The media often uses apocalyptic language to describe the consequences of climate change, which can be seen as a form of moral panic. This language can be particularly alienating for Christians who believe in a God who is in control of the world and has a plan for humanity's redemption. The use of images and videos that depict the devastating effects of climate change can also be seen as a form of emotional manipulation, designed to elicit a specific response from viewers. This can be particularly problematic for Christians who believe that the media's portrayal of global warming is exaggerated or misleading. It's also worth noting that the media's coverage of global warming can have a disproportionate impact on Christian communities in the developing world. In some cases, the media's emphasis on environmentalism can be used to justify policies that restrict economic development and limit access to natural resources. This can have devastating consequences for Christian communities in developing countries, where economic development is often seen as a key factor in improving living standards and reducing poverty. For example, the media's calls for an end to fossil fuel extraction can be seen as a form of economic imperialism, where Western countries impose their values and policies on developing nations. In conclusion, while the idea that the mainstream media uses global warming to oppress Christians may seem far-fetched, there are indeed arguments to be made that the media's portrayal of global warming can have a disproportionate impact on Christian communities. The media's emphasis on environmentalism, collective action, and government intervention can be seen as a challenge to Christian values in a form of oppression. The use of language and imagery can also be alienating and manipulative, particularly for Christians who believe in a God who is in control of the world. Ultimately, it's essential to approach this topic with nuance and sensitivity, recognizing that the media's coverage of global warming is complex and multifaceted. By engaging in open and respectful dialogue, we can work towards a more inclusive and equitable conversation about the role of Christianity in the public sphere.